So, good afternoon and welcome to the session on the rollout of renewable and low-carbon fuels and also the role on the energy transition. My name is Emanuela Sardellitti. I am executive at Fuels Europe, the association representing the fuel and manufacturing industry. Before start, let me remind a bit of some house rules, also to get you connected and interacting with our speakers. So we are going to use Slido, and please use the QR code in order to access the platform, and there you might want to pose questions to our speakers and also to share your thoughts on comments. The online audience is requested to kindly do the same. So in the chat box, also a link is going to be shared, as already shared. Please use the QR code that you see now on the screen also to access the platform. And a query, don't use the chat box to pose the questions, but also please use only Slido. Also, another opportunity that you have in this interactive mode is the opportunity to vote some questions in case you are interested to learn more. So you have also this opportunity. So back to our work today. We can start on a deeping dive on the session, which is devoted to the importance of renewable low-carbon fuels in the energy transition, with particular relevance for the context of the Renewable Low-Carbon Fuels Value Chain Alliance that was launched by the Commission in 2021 with different objectives. One of the most important is to sustain the decarbonization of the transport sector, namely aviation and maritime. In order to understand a bit more, I would like to invite the Commission actually to intervene, and I would like to invite Mr. Axel Volkerey to join me. Axel is Deputy Head of Unit, European Commission, DG Move, and I would like to invite Axel to present the Alliance and also let us know a bit the vision of the Commission on this initiative. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Emanuela. I hope you can all hear me well. Good afternoon to everyone in the room. Good afternoon also to the participants who are joining us online. It's great to have you. I'm very happy actually that we are all here together. As Emanuela said, the Alliance has been running for a little bit, and I think it's a perfect time that we take stock today of what has been done so far and what will be done in the future. And I can tell you a lot of work has been done and a lot of work still lies ahead of us. Before you hear more from our representatives from the different roundtables on this, just let me share with you from the point of view of the European Commission why we have actually kick-started this alliance. Because when you look at our sustainable and smart mobility strategy from the Commission, and if you have not done so, I strongly encourage you to do so, you will see that we really need to push the uptake of renewable and low-carbon fuels in the aviation and in the maritime sector, and we need to push it really quickly. Why? We all know these two important sectors at the moment do not really have other means at hand to decarbonize what we need to start decarbonizing. We have now provisional agreements on the Fuel EU Maritime Initiative, on the Refuel EU Aviation initiatives. These are two very important initiatives for these two sectors. And we also have now provisional agreement on the overall Renewable Energy Directive. So the course of the action that is set, and already by 2025 we have clear regulatory requirements that those modes of transport will have to meet. And that means we need to be ready to respond. And both aviation and waterborne transport, they both need to have sufficient access to renewable and low-carbon fuels. While, of course, we also have to take into account the future of these fuels in road transport. So we created this alliance as a platform for a strategic dialogue for all the market actors along the value chain. It was something that, from our point of view, when we started thinking about this alliance, was missing, and sort of having seen the discussions over the past months and years, it was clear that this interpretation was right. It has been missing, and it was good that we have set it up, because it's really closing that gap of having a strategic platform for all market actors to discuss. It brings together stakeholders from across the value chain, from sourcing of feedstock to end users, as well as technology providers for each step in the value chain. It also cuts across sectors, and I can tell you that it helps us reflect newly on things. In the Commission, for example, we are working on this file with colleagues from different directorates in DG Move, but also with other DGs. And this helps us breaking a little bit sort of silo perspective on transport needs. I think we have around now more than 250 members to this alliance, or even more. I mean, colleagues will correct me on the final number. I think this is a great testimony to the fact that this alliance is relevant. And I think in the first year, it was all about sort of breaking ground on how do we actually see sectoral needs, demand, and availabilities of those fuels. We are not starting from scratch, but let's be frank and honest. When you look at the state of play of market development, it is also clear that these fuels are not exactly abundant. So we need to create a common understanding and an orientation across the sectors, how to ensure that we can meet needs, that we can ensure how to upscale quickly production, that we have answers to questions, what are the most promising technology pathways forward, and that we ensure coherence in the way different sectorial needs are met. I think this is something you will learn about more and discuss today with the colleagues from our roundtables, because we approached this discussion through roundtables, bringing together a group of selected members of this alliance, and they have been very instrumental for assessing, fuels of particular interest, to analyze strong and weak points in the value chain, to evaluate enabling conditions, to review access to finance, and to seek synergies. I think this is really what this alliance is about, and I'm looking forward to a great discussion today. But let me conclude with a final point on what is the most urgent priority with this alliance, and that is to get to market impact. Getting from small scale, getting from pilot projects to greater scale projects that are actually bankable, that can help quickly scale production. So here I think we have been working, and we will continue to work with the members in the alliance to get of a sufficient number of projects for the pipeline of projects that we are envisaging as a key priority deliverable under this alliance. Because that's the key objective. We want to scale, we want to help the market to scale and come forward with greater and larger numbers of projects. And from what I can see so far, we are on a good pathway, and we are of course looking forward to the discussions today with you to understand and learn from you how we can do this better together. Because in the end, this is a collaborative sort of industry to industry process, and we are really here to serve you. Thanks a lot.
So thank you very much, Axel. The Commission mentioned different roundtables, and our panelist comes actually from the 4 thematic roundtables, and I would like to stress them because their work is very important. So the first roundtable was devoted to feedstock and synergies, the second, production pathways and value chain for aviation, the third, production pathways and value chain for the transport, waterborne transport, and finally, access to finance. Then I would like to invite the speakers, actually, to the other panelists to join us here. So in the order, I would like to invite Mr. Antoine Laborde, Director, Fuel Procurement, Air France, Chair of Roundtable number 2. Welcome. Mr. Alexander Fent, Global Business Development Management, Man Energy Solution, Chair of Roundtable number 3. Mr. Riccardo Dutto, chair of roundtable number 4. He is global head of infrastructure real estate in Intesa San Paulo. Welcome. And then remotely connected, we have two colleagues. First of all, we have Mr. Renato De Filippo, Vice Chair of Roundtable number 1, Head of Regulatory Positioning and Associations, Refining Fuels Mobility at ENI. Welcome. And then we have Mrs. Immaculata Gomez, SAF National Expert at the Spanish Ministry of Transport, Mobility and Urban Agenda. Welcome also to you both. So let me start with posing a question to Mr. De Filippo. It is about the work done around the roundtable number 1 that the Commission mentioned before, and we know that you have elaborated and work out a database of action and to collect information around the feedstock. This is a very important element, and we would be very keen on learning the outcome of your discussion, the outcome of your work, and please share with us the conclusions on the feedstock and the availability of them, because they are really the key bone in order to support the rollout of renewable fuels in Europe. Thank you very much.
So thank you so much, Emanuele, for this question. Well, let me say that since the beginning of our action, we focused the activity to understand whether the supply of the feedstock would be enough, would be available, would be affordable in order to meet the demand for renewable and low-carbon fuels in the coming years, in particular those, let me say, part of the demand stemming out from the regulatory side. There could be another part that will be driven by voluntary commitment. So in order to do that, we had to explore what are the studies that have been conducted so far at European but also international level regarding this new sector. What would be, in particular, the major, I would say, set of experts would help us, with their studies to understand fully. So, during our meetings, we had the possibility to invite some of these experts. I will not, cite all of them, but nevertheless, there were major consultants, major centers for research studies at the European and international levels. And out of this work during the meetings, all of us, all the members of the roundtable had the possibility to understand a little bit more about the gaps, about the opportunities, about what are the needs to fully develop the value chain of the renewable and low-carbon fuels. The understanding, I would say, that the outcome of this analysis we've done so far is that there is enough, based on the studies that we've seen, there is enough availability of feedstock, even though, investments are available, and these feedstocks could come either from Europe. There are some studies that absolutely show that there is full availability and opportunity in Europe to develop these feedstocks, or either from outside Europe. We've seen also some projects that are working in other jurisdictions, in other countries, and that can help, along with European partners, the business sector, but also, the decision maker that have to create the enabled conditions can help to also, let me say, distillate to drive, sustainable development outside of Europe by importing also this feedstock in Europe. So The final answer to your question is yes. I mean, the final outcome is positive, even though we do need, I mean, to support this development at scale of feedstock production, even though, I mean, it's a promising sector.
Thank you very much, Mr. De Filippo. So building on what you have said, I would like to shift a bit on the technology options, because we are addressing the demand and the production towards two different sectors, waterborne and aviation. So different sectors with different needs in terms of products. And I would like to ask you if, in terms of technology options, you have assessed a sort of priority list, or if your group has somehow described and crafted some preference for each on a specific technology option. Seems to be freezed. We can move on and eventually back to Mr. De Filippo.
Is it fine? Is it fine now? Can you?
Yes,
can you
now
see me?
yes. Thank you.
It's okay. I mean, regarding technologies, let me say that I mean, we had so far a great opportunity by, I mean, analyzing these studies, but also taking into considerations the experiences and the projects that are already on the ground to start the first recognition of what are the most promising technologies. Nevertheless, based on the fact that we have a lot of experts of each, let me say, also technology, even commercial or less commercial on, or just promising one within the roundtable and within the alliance, we launched the survey that is currently still ongoing to identify the different gaps and the different opportunities deriving from the most interesting pathways along, let me say, the future decades. So, I mean, when we will complete also this survey and we will get the informations from the experts of the alliance, we will have another help, I mean, to understand fully what will be the most promising set of technology to present, I mean, outside as those that have to be sustained, let me say, supported in order to fulfill the needs that we have for renewables and low carbon fuels.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. De Filippo. With that, I would like to pass to our second panelist, Mr. Antoine Laborde, for chair for roundtable number 2. And I would like to invite you to elaborate a bit more on your work that you have performed during the first year of the Alliance, and also if you could share with us the main challenges that your group has identified when it comes to the decarbonization of the aviation sector. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is it working? Yes. Good evening, everyone. So my name is Antoine Laborde. I am Fuel Director for Air France, and I am very happy to be here today as chairman of Roundtable 2 for Aviation. I had the opportunity to present the Alliance a few days ago at the Paris Air Show of Le Bourget. You know, it's one of the main events in terms of aeronautics, and I was very impressed. People were really interested in the Alliance, but on a more global scale, sustainability is everywhere. SAF is everywhere in the show, so it is really a new topic today. that is on everyone's mouth. So it is a bit of the good part of it. Maybe more difficult part. You may know, but a few hours ago, a massive multi-complaint was filed against, I think, 17 airlines, accusing airlines of greenwashing, and also SAF was also a bit given as an example of greenwashing. Say, well, SAF does not exist. Airlines or the industry states it will decarbonize the industry, but it's a bit fake. So we really see the challenge that we have ahead of us. We need to make it happen. We need to make it happen in a good way, because we have some skeptic around us. Just also here the question the European Commission is asking us at this roundtable is we are going to set some mandates for SAF. We are quite happy that a few days ago, I think last Friday, the EU ambassador agreed on the final text. We hope it will pursue its pathway and at the end be finally approved, I hope before the end of the year or in the coming weeks. So we have this pathway, and now the question that we are asked is how, as an industry, we organize ourselves, how we make sure that we can make it on every step. So I think within the roundtable, we fully support, I think, the two objectives of the European Commission. And first is to increase the usage of SAF within Europe, and secondly is to produce, if not all, at least a great part of the SAF we need within Europe. So who are we as this roundtable? We are 53 members from all parts of the value chain. We have airlines, we have banks, we have international and European bodies. We have aircraft manufacturers, we have OEMs, we have also, of course, SAF producer. So we have the full value chain here, and we've decided to organize ourselves into 6 working groups with a global goal, and this goal is to get to a shared vision on how we stand today in terms of SAF. How much SAF do we actually need? Today we have percentages, but how much million tons of SAF do we need each year from today until 2050? What is the current situation? How many projects, how many plants, what technology? And once we've seen a bit of the gap between what we want and what is currently planned, we try to see what is the best way to go to this desirable future in terms of what kind of technology we should use, where we need to find specific feedstock. So the idea is to assess the barriers and the opportunities to move to this desirable future. So we are organizing 6 workshops. Each of the workshops is led by one of the members of the roundtable. The first workshop is about knowledge management. You know it, and we have maybe almost 1 report every week about SAF. We have lots of papers, conferences. We have this world of SAF evolves a lot in terms of regulations, techniques, price. So it's not at all easy for the full body to have the same level of information. So one of the first work we are trying to do is to assess what are the good documents we need to have, what could be the kind of Bible of SAF that everyone should read. And I think this is part of the educational world work we have to create towards SAF. The second workshop is very important. It's one of the first things that we have to do is to actually define what are our needs in terms of SAF. So we've seen we have the mandates, but the mandate does not give it all. It's a percentage. We also have a voluntary demand from airlines. And in order to know what is the number of SAF that we need to know what is the forecast of traffic, what is the forecast of a fleet renewal, of a new aircraft coming in. So the idea is really to have concrete numbers of metric tons of SAF every year, and then to transform this number of SAF into number of plants, number of biomass, quantity of energy that we need, and so quantity of hydrogen that we need. So the idea is really to be practical and to really assess the specific needs that we have. Then the third one is to screen what are the current SAF projects that we know of today. You know that, I mean, almost every week we hear a new project coming in, but it's not easy to know exactly how many of these projects will survive, how many will have delays, how many will actually produce what they claim they will produce, or will they produce fuel for road, maritime, or aviation. Sometimes it could be one or the other. So it's a tough exercise to assess really what we can count on in terms of demand. We also have the work on different SAF production pathways. So really the idea is jointly with Roundtable One is to about feedstock, is to see what are the more mature pathways and what should be triggered first in order to reach our goal in terms of SAF. Then we have a workshop on SAF qualification and certification. You know that there are different ways to produce SAF, and the idea is also to work with the EASA clearinghouse to help new production pathways that some European producer wants to push forward. So the idea is to be sure that globally, in the industry, we can help new pathways of SAF to be qualified soon. You know, we also have some challenges regarding moving to 100% of SAF within aircraft. Today, you know, we are limited to 50%. So it is also one of the challenges to deal with this aspect. We have a final one, which is very linked to the work which is done in the Roundtable on Finance. You know that in order to make this work, SAF must be affordable for the end consumer, for airlines. Plants must be financed. And so there is a great importance that we all share common views and works to be sure that we manage to reach this production.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Very, very clear and I would say overarching. I have a question to you because you mentioned the educational work and connecting a bit the dots. The Commission at the very beginning mentioned the pipeline of projects that the Alliance has the ambition to very swiftly create. So it is a very good initiative, also identifying that the industry is in motion towards the direction of the net zero ambition. And I would like to ask you, what is your opinion and the opinion of the group around the project pipeline, and how do you think the Alliance might help in setting up that very ambitious activity? Thank you.
Thank you. I think this project pipeline has different goals. One is to have a clear view within Europe of what are the existing projects. One is to be sure that this pipeline of project helps the finance guy to be able to see that this project makes sense, is linked to the European goals that we have. And third objective, it was what was called by Flo, I think, the Tinder of SAF project, but the idea is that all the value chain can come together and that a project can find financer, can find feedstock, so that all together we really manage to bring all parties so that we facilitate a lot this production part. So I think, yes, it's a very valuable initiative.
Thank you. Thank you very much. With that, I would like to pass to our next speaker, Mr. Alexander Fent, Chair of Roundtable number 3. And I would like to, for kicking start, to pose a very similar question, knowing that the maritime, the waterborne transport has a specific needs, very peculiar characteristics. And my very first question is how your group, the group that you are chairing, has taken these kind of very crucial specificities on board. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So first of all, maybe let me just take the opportunity to applaud the Commission for actually establishing such an alliance and creating a forum for the industry, but also the different sectors to be able to communicate and discuss on the various matters, because I think decarbonization is a team effort, yeah, so partnerships are crucial and exchanging is crucial, and this is a very good forum for, let's say, European activities to do so, so thanks. To come to your question, I think I'll try to answer that in the next minutes while I present the work that we're doing in the waterborne roundtable. Maybe just a few words up front. Shipping and maritime is the invisible giant. Yeah? Most of the products, most of the goods that we use, that we have, are being shipped, but it's just not seen because those vessels are out there globally. All those vessels obviously use fuels, and hence shipping is responsible for 3%, close to, a little less, 3% of global CO2 emissions. This is more than my home country, Germany. So that means there is some work to do to decarbonize and to reduce emissions, and this is exactly the task that the Alliance has, that we try to do for the European continent, for the European market participants. What we have done in the beginning is basically look at the different elements that are relevant to decarbonize shipping. Also look a bit at other initiatives that happen globally. So the global regulator is the International Maritime Organization, the IMO, that plays a huge role. Other regions also regulate, and shipping is a global business, so we always need to take into consideration what is happening globally and not only on that isolated island, Europe. So what we've basically done is try to look at what's already happening, what we can focus on, also with the limited resources that we have, so the members, but also the time that we have. And we've narrowed down basically a list into 4 different work streams, as we call them, or focus areas, which are headed by 4 different individuals that represent also different parts of the value chain, as you can see on that slide here. The first roundtable, or the first work stream is focusing on coming up with marine supply and demand numbers, basically being a mirror to the energy roundtable that looks at the production. We try to look at the demand for the maritime industry. In a bit of a top-down exercise, we've developed scenarios where we looked at what type of fuels, also what colors of fuels, of the individual fuels, need to be available by what time frame, because based on the application, the vessel type, we can make certain assumptions which fuels are being relevant and which are not. That is currently being discussed, so it's still a bit of work in progress, but we are close to concluding that and then also be able to match that to the work that is being done in the first roundtable on energy and the production capacities. We will also, in a more qualitative approach, look at, let's say, more, let's say, non-number-based elements of demand and supply. So, is there enough terminal space available in the European ports? Do we need to reallocate certain tanks and storage in ports? Do we have enough bunkering vessels available? Do the ports, all of them, or the major bunkering ports, have the allocated space to be able to bunker certain type of fuels at certain parts of their ports? Because all the new fuels that we are discussing have their respective challenges. When it comes to explosion, toxicity, lower energy density and hence higher space requirements. And maybe one thing just to note, in contrast to what Antoine and his aviation colleagues are doing, we're actually not talking about one alternative, but we are actually talking about 6 alternatives. So there is no marine alternative fuel. We actually have marine alternative fuels, plural. Yeah? So different options for different applications. So let's say the flower is much more diversified that we look at and that we need to check and work on. The second work stream that we have is on fuel certification and fuel contracts. The big question actually is what qualifies as a gray, blue, or green fuel, and how is that being certified and actually proven? Because we can foresee a world where you use, for example, different types of methanol, but you need to prove how the ratio actually looks like, because then based on that you will have to pay certain penalties or avoid certain penalties, have to pay certain CO2 taxes or avoid certain CO2 taxes. So that there's nothing that is, let's say, straightforward. I think globally we have something like 12 different certification schemes, and we'll try to find out which ones are most applicable for the maritime world in Europe. And we'll also try to find out operationally how we can put that into practice, within bunkery delivery nodes, within testing procedures, within infrastructure in ports. That is something that we're actually doing. And as I said, decarbonization is a team sport, so we don't want to reinvent the wheel and do everything by ourselves. We actually working together with the European Sustainable Shipping Forum, which has a similar working group, to cooperate with them and work together and develop those certification details. There's another part which looks at offtake agreements for fuel. There's a group which is called BIMCO that is very experienced in developing contract drafts and templates. So we're working with them to basically also develop this area. The third one, the commercial pipeline, has been partly covered already by Antoine. So this is really, I like the idea of a dating platform. So this is really the matchmaking attempt between the producer and the off-taker, the demand side. We have now basically clarified and agreed on the parameters, on the different fields that need to be filled out, and they now need to be programmed by an external supplier, so that platform and database is actually being made available and filled with life. But we are confident that this will work out in the next month. The last part, or the last work stream, is on regulation. Just to be specific here, it's not to reinvent or create new regulation, it's to look at existing regulation. In shipping in Europe, there are various pieces of legislation in place or soon to be in place from different Directorate-Generals of the European Commission, and we need to make sure that there aren't any loopholes when it comes to, for example, are we looking at well-to-wake or tank-to-wake? What emissions are in, which emissions are out, what are the timelines? Those kind of things we actually would like to clarify and suggest how they could be aligned further, just to avoid, let's say, hindrance on the way to decarbonization. The second slide I've partly covered. It's just a bit of an update on the 4 work streams that I've just talked you through. So we've done the analysis on the demand, which we now will need to finalize and then check with the Energy Roundtable. We have done a workshop with ESSF and now looking at the contracts and also bunker flow process and the documents that are needed for those fuels and how those can be certified. The database has been covered. So in theory, we've agreed how it should look like. Now it needs to be programmed. And the last one on the regulation is also close to being concluded. We've identified top 5 issues for us, and now we need to come up with some mitigations and put that in formal writing. So we are very well equipped to do so by October, when we will have our General Assembly and meet with the other 3 roundtables to discuss further. With that, I'm open for any comments or questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Building on what you just said, you mentioned 6 alternatives and for different applications. Do you think that the project pipelines that will be very soon set up is going to help you and your group to streamline, have a better idea of these kind of challenges somehow?
That is a good question. To be honest, I don't know. I mean, it will certainly give confidence to the involved parties when it comes to their strategies and making sure that certain fuels are made available and also investment decisions can be taken because there is an anchor customer, for example, for a fuel supplier. I don't know whether we will see a trend evolving out of, let's say, the database, because also we need to acknowledge that certain applications are really niche, yeah. So it's not really a trend, and also bunkering will happen globally. So also outside Europe, even though vessels will be sailing in Europe, yeah, we cannot expect that all of the fuels being used in Europe will also be bunkered in Europe and be mirrored in the database, yeah. So there's a certain element of, let's say, fog that we don't see and will not be mirrored there.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Very important also to have pointed that out. Thank you very much. And I would like now to invite, last but not least, given that you are Mr. Dutto, representative of the financial sector somehow. So it's really the skeleton of all these that we have debated so far. So you are chair of roundtable number 4 about financing, public and private, and on the financial side, precisely. We know that the decarbonization of aviation and maritime needs a long-term planning, investment, and usually this kind of investments really needs certainty for the remuneration, but also some predictability, either on the market, but also on the regulatory side. So all of these together are somehow elements, characteristics, but also are somehow challenges. How your group and you somehow navigated through all these. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. If you remember, when I joined the Alliance 1 year ago, I was defined a white panda because I was among the few guys coming from the financial world. I think it's a challenge, but I think it's a very, very interesting challenge. By chance, I think also to have the skills coming from the infrastructure sector to apply the solution and the products that we have in the infrastructure world in terms of PPP schemes and blended finance to the production of green fuels. But let me give you some context of the energy transition vis-à-vis the bankability of project. The energy transition basically is the first industrial revolution led by policy, not by technology improvements. All the previous industrial revolutions were led by a more efficient technology breakthrough coming out, spreading over the market with pricing signals. This is the first policy-led revolution. We want to adopt technologies that broadly are not yet a break-even and need to be scaled up. This is not a limit because the nature of this technology is supposed to have huge experience curve to exploit, so the break-even is not so far. But we need to overcome a sort of dead valley because you can capitalize on experience curve if you invest, if you produce, because experience curve, so costs are driven down by the cumulated volume of production. So if you want electrolyzer cost to decrease, you need to produce a lot of electrolyzer, unless you are stuck to the T0 cost. That's the rule of the game. So you need at the very beginning to leverage on some sort of public budget, but it's not that budget is quite limited. So you need to find ways to crowd in the private sector. And to crowd in the private sector, you need to use the typical PPP, public-private partnership solution, and the blended finance solution. The rest is a natural consequence because bankability of a project has quite simple metric. You need to have a business plan with positive cash flows, quite possibly visible, stable, and coming out from your business in the long term. Then you use those cash flows to repay the capital and the debt, and to size up the debt load can be put on a single project. So the first hurdle is to handle with technologies that are not at break-even, so positive cash flow. You need some support to get, at the very beginning, positive cash flow. Then you need to de-risk your project because now you have a brand new regulation framework, but it's naive to think that this framework will remain stable in the next 20 years because you need to adapt to the obstacles and to overcome all the issues and problems that you will encounter in your pattern. And so you need some kind of protection vis-a-vis regulation volatility. Then you need all the new technology create physical arbitrage between food, energy, fertilizer, fuel, plastic, etc. So arbitrage are not that good for bankability, because you can lose your feedstock, or the price of your feedstock can increase dramatically because other supply chain are hitting in your supply chain. So that's another risk. Then you have the risk of technology reliability because you are using new technology that you need to scale up for the first time. You risk displacement from breakthrough of new technology because you have a flood of money that is put on research and development of new technique and new way of producing green energy, and your investment risk to be displaced by positive discoveries in the technological fields. You're lacking long-term market for green fuels. You can suffer some logistic bottlenecks as the one in ports described by my colleagues from the shipping sector. And then you have the supply chain, the readiness of the supply chain to serve and to provide you the assets that are needed for your investment. You have competition between different jurisdictions. You have scalability not yet tested, lack of standardization, and lack of liquidity size of the project, because one thing is to study and to have a tailor-made solution for a couple of billion investment, and it's a complete another story to find a solution for a 30 million project, because the payoff is not worth the effort. So these are the hurdles to overcome to reach bankability. And I think the actual setup of the regulation is quite good, because in terms of break-even, you have a different levers that are used by the regulator in terms of mandatory blending quota, increasing of the opportunity cost of fossil alternatives, pricing the CO2, so the negative externality of fossil fuels, or all those together with the grants are levers to help your project to reach quite quickly the break-even. Then you need level playing field policies, because you can't just follow one player in an industry and neglect all the other because they are not investment grade players. So you need long-term offtake agreements. And the funny story experienced by me within the alliance, that at the very beginning everybody agreed, I need long-term offtake. What's the problem? We are ready to give you long-term agreement. But for how many years? 3-4 years. So to amortize basically what is an infrastructure investment, you need 15-20 years of take agreements in reality, in the real world. So you have a mismatch between maturity of the offtake agreement on the demand side and the maturity of the offtake agreement that you need on the supply side to reach bankability of production. So you need, and then you need a vertically integrated project, because vertically integrated project complied with the regulation, because you have hourly correlation, you have a certificate of origin, you have geographical correlation, you have all the boxes that are checked with the RED II Delegated Act, and you do not suffer arbitrage from other supply chain. So this is quite a good signal for a bank, for a lender. And then you need to pull demand to increase the size of the project. You need to standardize the offtake agreement, because standardization is good for the financial world, because reduce the break-even, so the size of the project, and you can spread your cost of finding a solution over a higher volume of project and the business opportunity. And then to solve the volatility of the regulation, as I told before, you need some kind of grandfathering protection at the very beginning. So once you build a project relying on a specific setup of the regulation, this setup should be preserved for the project, not for the entire system, till the end of your business plan. I think this is fair for the pioneer investor in this field, and I think can be mitigated once the technology reaches the break-even point, and then you go without this kind of protection. You can incur in further risk. But still the technologies and many of the pathways I saw in discussion in the Alliance are not yet at break-even. So you need some protection in terms of volatility, cash flow, to get bankability. And once you have an integrated business model and business plan, you can sort out that business model with a fair IRR also for equity investor, and you can sort out the funding gap, so the supported unit from the private sector, from the public sector, sorry, in terms of revenue premium, in terms of euro per kilograms of hydrogen used to produce the fuel, or in terms of capex upfront contribution. It's just maths, and you can build up an integrated project with this kind of information. The outcome is that through that financial model, you create a partnership with between the private and the public sector to reach final investment decision and make things happen. 1 second left.
Thank you very much. Really sharp and on time. Thank you. It seems very complex, but you somehow simplified all the layer of complexity. So thank you very much. I have a very short question to you. So please, in one word, if you can. During the first year of the Alliance, you had several interactions with different financial stakeholders, Unipol, EBRD, EIB, and others. Have they helped you to progress in your discussion?
No, I think we have a number of tools and also a lot of smart guys that are ready to work with us to find solution to de-risk these new business models. And I'm quite optimistic that many solutions will come alive in this respect. And as a task for the Alliance coming from the Roundtable 4, it will be a sort of project guide that will be a sort of summary of all the public financial instruments and grants that are available for specific project, risk mitigation instruments that are made available by public institution and insurance sector, but also the documentation that you need to build to apply for a loan in this field, and also a tricky point that is the certification. For bankability, you need the certification of the inputs and of the outputs of your project, and it's not the certification to use the fuel in the engine. It's a different kind of certification. The certification is that you are complying with the rule. Because if you want to get a grant, you need to get a certification for the inputs and the outputs, green outputs of your plant, at the very beginning and during the life of the project, because only with this we can minimize the reputational risk that we incur when you give grants and you give credit to a brand new technology in a brand new field that need to be complied with new rules.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And now I would like to pass to our colleague connected online, Mrs. Immaculada Gomez. We are more than welcome to have you here, so thanks for your attendance. You are connected from Spain, and we all know that your government will be soon the upcoming and incoming presidency of the Council of the EU, so you are I would say doubled welcome also in the light of your positioning here. So please let us know, have your view on the alliance, and also how do you think that the member states could really contribute to this very important project launched by the Commission. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Manuela, for the welcoming, and also let me first thank the Alliance and the Commission for inviting me to be here to share our role as partners of the Alliance and also as member states. Spain, let me just introduce a little bit the trajectory of the country regarding this topic. We have participated in the preceding initiatives from the International Civil Aviation Organization early conferences in 2009 to the following at the European level EU Biofuels Flight Path later in 2016. And now we are really happy to be members of this alliance, because we really recognize the high and very valuable and tangible value of cooperation. And also very, very proud having contributed to the first long-haul flights, such as the one Aeromexico made to Madrid in 2011, or the Air France KLM made to Aruba with SAF in 2014. I have seen how pioneers as Air France KLM, we have Antoine here now chairing the roundtable too, have been working very hard to make SAF use our reality, and I'm very happy that today we are already obtaining some results, and that we are in the path of a very promising future that was really difficult to conceive in those very early days in 2009. But we have already achieved a significant progress. Is what I wanted to transmit all of you, because you can see SAF as a very relevant pillar in most, if not all, the visions, the aviation visions, and supply is already increasing every day. On a more political side, Spain has one of the first countries that brought to the ICAO context the need of mandates to break the issue on the chicken and the egg thing on demand and supply. So the lack of demand, lack of supply. And nowadays we are very lucky that mandates are a reality in some countries, but the more that's with RefuelEU, we are going to have a level playing field regarding SAF, because we think that for the EU market that's the ideal solution so far. And it will be even better if we can get an agreement later this year in the ICAO conference CAF3 to set a global framework. Because that will be much more relevant for our producers and from our users of SAF. As you said, I mean, I'm actually one of the several participants in the roundtable too, and I see really a very great value on that participation. Something that I wanted also to broad. Because having the opportunity, of course, we have several platforms in Spain already, but having the opportunity to be in close contact not only with the Spanish stakeholders, but also with other key stakeholders in the overall European market is extremely valuable. And I also think that it is both sides, because for the public authorities, for the governments, we can anticipate to the hurdles. One thing is the political conception, another very different, sometimes, believe me, is the implementation. So we need to anticipate to those hurdles, to those needs, bottlenecks for implementation and deployment. And I think for the industry, it's also very, very interesting and very useful to have a channel that gets the governments quicker and more directly and can discuss more in deep these technical issues than if they made it individually. For us, is therefore a win-win situation, and we recommend, and I use this platform to recommend to my European Union colleagues to participate, but we also recommend it as much as we can outside the EU, because we think it's very valuable how the alliance has been set. I would like to congratulate the European Commission for having set it, and also having the opportunity. I would like to thank all the participants. On the participants.
Okay.
Yes, on the point you mentioned, Emmanuel, on the Spain presidency, the future Spain presidency, for the second half of this year, it is a period of great challenges for the member states, but also for the union as a whole. And the Spanish presidency, as you could have seen in the slide, has established 4 big priorities that can just titles included in the slide. The slide was being shared: the reindustrialize the EU and ensure the open strategic autonomy, advance in the green transition and environmental protection, promoting greater social and economic justice, and stressing the European unity. All these 4 priorities are somehow or other closely linked with the renewable energy, which is the part of the core of the ambition of the alliance. And I would like to go a bit deeper and to share with you overall how these priorities relate to those to the alliance. So let me start for the first of the priorities regarding industrialization. Of course, this session is devoted to the renewable and low carbon value chains industrial alliance, and one of the hot topics in the discussion within the roundtables is how to achieve the needed industrial technological deployment for the established climate targets, or the ambitious climate targets, in a highly competitive and global world. We are in a global market, that's clear, and this is even more evident when we talk about maritime and aviation transport. All the different strategies at any other region of the world could cause uncertainties about the market, not only of the final product, what is relevant, of course, if we talk about SAF or any other fuel, or even that of the intermediates. We can talk about think about hydrogen, but also about the key materials, and I mean for the industry itself, and even the human capital, sometimes disregarded, for the deployment to the technologies and the industry. To reindustrialize the EU and ensure its open strategic autonomy, the Spanish presidency will work in 2 fronts. On one hand, it will promote those dossiers which foster the development of strategic industries and technologies in Europe, with expansion and diversification of its trade relations and the strengthening of its supply chains, giving special attention to the Latin American and the EUSEW summit. On the other hand, the Spanish presidency will propose a forward-looking, comprehensive strategy to ensure the economic security and global leadership of the EU by 2030, providing in this way continuity and depth to the work the European institutions and the roadmap are already agreed in Versailles by the 27. Other big priority, and probably even more relevant, is advancing in the green transition and the environmental adaptation. Curbing climate change and environmental degradation is not only a legal and moral obligation for Europeans, it is also a huge opportunity. If we executed it well, the green transition will allow us to drastically reduce our dependence on energy and raw materials, lower our electricity bill, make our companies more competitive, and create nearly 1 million jobs in this decade alone. The Spanish presidency will do its utmost to foster this transition. That's very relevant, important priority for us. We will promote a reform of the electricity market aimed at accelerating the deployment of renewable energies, the reduction of electricity prices, and the improvement of the system stability. You all probably know, but improving the electricity system and market, in particular regarding the renewable energies, of course, really crucial for producing e-fuels. Moreover, a quicker and robust electrification of other sectors, not in this case talking on maritime and aviation, such as road or industry, brings further opportunities to the sector in such maritime and aviation that are still and will be for long strongly dependent on liquid hydrocarbon fuels, at least for the case of aviation. We will therefore, as Spain, will also work to accelerate the legislative files related to the Fit for 55 package, such as the gas and hydrogen package and the energy efficiency regulations. Furthermore, we will promote measures for the reduction of waste and microplastic, the design of sustainable products, and the generation of green fuels, all very related with the overarching ambition of the alliance. All this so that the EU continues to lead the global fight against climate changes, and does so by creating wealth and new opportunities through this territory. Will those two, reindustrialization and strategic autonomy and ecological transition, those are the most directly entangled with the aim of the alliance. The other two of the four out of the four are also very crucial. We sometimes, or well, always, I will say, we usually say in aviation sector that the aviation will be sustainable or won't be. So in a very similar way, we cannot, from the Spanish perspective of this presidency, we cannot understand other energy transition than the just transition. Therefore, the third priority is promoting greater social and economic justice should not be also disregarded in this session. We need a more competitive economy, but also a fairer and more caring one. In this sense, the Spanish presidency will seek to give continuity to the Union's sustainable and intelligent mobility strategy, promoting resilient mobility centered on people and as an element of social and territorial cohesion. In particular, mobility will be promoted as a right for all citizens, essential to assess other rights such as housing, work, education, and health. Particular emphasis will be placed also on the role of women in the transport sector, both as users and as professionals. At this point, I would like to finalize, to end my intervention, focusing on something I highlighted in the very beginning. That is, we cannot make this transition alone. I will add further, we should not make this transition individually. In a world of uncertainty and growing geopolitical tensions, the EU must remain united. And that's why member states must continue to make progress in integration and develop tools that will allow them to face together the great challenges of our time. And that's the reason behind the fourth, last but not least, priority, strengthening European unity. In conclusion, we don't understand that the European project, but being a strong, resilient, united, sustainable, and fair, and renewable fuels clearly play a crucial role on it. So thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Immaculada, elaborating not only on your, let's say, trajectories for your presidency, but also on very important points, international actions, the ICAO work, to conclude somehow with the just transition. This is something that it is very much embedded into the alliance, and also was mentioned by the panelists, if I don't mistake, Monsieur Laborde talk about affordability of the fuels. So something very important to have in mind. And now I would like to turn to our question and answer session. I have already a list of very interesting questions that were posed by the audience, either the audience here and our virtual audience. And I would like to start with, I would say, a policy question for the Commission. If Axel would like to take it. It's about the net zero technology and the net zero strategy. So the question reads, any thoughts about the fact that renewable and low carbon fuels are net zero technology, but not strategic within the context of the Net Zero Industry Act? So perhaps, Axel, you are the best one placed to respond to that, if you don't mind. Thank you.
Thank you. And it's of course a relevant and timely question. First of all, I think we have to acknowledge that it's a great thing to have those kind of fuels in the context of this act and to have them firmly established as net zero technologies. Because what it means is that, and we have to see, of course, what the European co-legislators will do with this act, because it is under co-decision. But if it goes through like that, it at least means that member states have to ensure a streamlining and of permitting and planning processes for these kind of operations that produce the fuel. So it's not about the production of the fuel, it's about the sort of organization of installations that produce the fuel, so that we get there to a clear and quantified timetable for the installation. I think that's a massive improvement compared to what we have now. And then it's a question related to that is that there is a second category of projects which are called strategic net zero tech, where there are further additional requirements to help implement projects. Here, I think the view of the Commission was, and I can say that there was quite a lot of discussion within the Commission on that, to start with a sort of list of technologies that are key to the different sectors, and start with a list that is sort of comprehensive enough on the one hand, but not too long on the other hand, in order not to overwhelm sort of the political and administrative system. We will see what will come out from the discussion. I think from our point of view, speaking here particularly, of course, from a transport perspective, we can of course understand concerns or legitimate calls from part of the market actors from a transport perspective that it would be good to have these technologies also firmly established in the net zero tech. And now it's basically for the Parliament and the Council to kind of conclude this discussion, because that's where the file is now. So I hope that, also happy, of course, to hear the views from my co-panelists.
Thank you. So I don't think the other panelists are going to react to this. So I'm going to take another question on the e-bio-SAF, and perhaps I would address this, direct this question to Mr. Laborde about the pathway of the e-bio-SAF pathway, and if this kind of pathways has been considered or not in your work, and if it is a promising area to explore, given that this is a pathway optimizing somehow biomass and renewable electricity in e-fuels projects. Please.
Yes, so very quickly, and when you need to make SAF, you need both carbon and hydrogen. Okay, so one way is a bio pathway, so you use carbon and hydrogen coming from plants mainly that took it from the air a few weeks ago. The issue with this pathway, there's two issues. There can be the lack of feedstock, biomass, hard to find biomass, and the other issue is that when you do this process, you have an excess of carbon compared to hydrogen. So in fact, you lose a bit of this carbon feedstock. The other pathway, which we call e-fuel, you make hydrogen, green hydrogen, so mainly with water and a lot of electricity needed, and you capture CO2 from the air. So we could say that there is no issue about feedstock in this pathway. The only problem is that the amount of energy you need to produce e-fuel is huge. And so this e-bio pathway is very promising because you make the most of the biomass you have, and in order not to lose the carbon, you add hydrogen to it. So it's improve the rendement. I don't know, it improves the productions of SAF by I think at least 30%. So yes, I think it's a very promising pathway. And we already have some projects that are about to be launched in this field.
Okay, thank you. Very interesting. Thanks a lot for elaborating on this. And then I would like to pick a question for Mr. Fent about roundtable number 3. It's about shipping fuels certification, which is key, said our guest. Ships operators would be accountable at the end of the day. When do you think the Alliance could finalize the work? It is perhaps a question where you can start responding, and perhaps your colleagues might also build on this. Thank you.
The short answer would be we're working against the deadline of October this year. Obviously, the more elaborate answer is the work of the Alliance will continue after October this year. So obviously, we need to keep some work to be busy after October. No, but in all fairness, this is no easy task. I've mentioned briefly 12 global schemes in place, not all of them overlapping, different ideas for different regimes and different sectors. So I think we will make progress on some of those elements, how they can be operationalized within bunker delivery nodes, for example. Will we have testing in place in different ports? So, I mean, there are certain new equipment necessary, artificial DNA being needed and added to those fuels, potentially technological tools to have a foolproof paper chain or paper trail to make sure that the different types of fuels and certified fuels are actually being used and in the tank or in the different parts of the value chain. I would expect this not to be solved within this year, so it's a work in progress thing. But I mean, we know each other, you're part of the Alliance, so we can continue the discussion there and also maybe take some of your expectations and learnings on board. But I don't expect that to be solved anytime soon because very smart people have been working on this for years globally. So even though we are also smart, I don't believe we will solve it within a few months, unfortunately.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any other reaction on this? Mr. Dutto.
If you want, I can answer to the third question.
Yes, sure. You can start, but I would like also to invite Mr. Volkerey also to take this one to complement to yours. Please. So just for our audience, the question reads, renewable fuels require electrons and CO2. The new RED 2 delegated act says that fossil CO2 can only be used until 2040. We will have enough biogenic CO2?
No, the problem is not if we will have enough biogenic CO2. The problem from the bankability perspective is that this feature of the regulation is a sort of mousetrap for bankability, because how can I build a business plan and stretch the business plan beyond 2040? Because I have no clue, and I think nobody has a clue on how will cost the direct CO2 capture in 2041. And if I need to invest in a project now, this means that I will have only 70 years to amortize everything. Now, if I invest now. If I invest in 2030, I will have only 10 years to amortize the investment. Unless I make assumption in my business plan of new capacity in 2041 for direct air capture, and an assumption that is a broad assumption on the cost. Now, the cost, if you capture the CO2 at the chimney of a cement plant, I heard that the costs are around 70 euro per ton. Now, I also heard that the cost for direct air capture are around 700 euro per ton. So, those are numbers that now are not manageable in a business plan for an extended bankability. So this means that the debt sizing of the project will be smaller, and you need to repay with the cash flow that the project produces till 2040 almost all the debt that you put on your project. And this is a detail that needs to be handled, because if these rules apply only to new project, this is a different kind of story.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Very, very interesting. And I would like to invite the Commission also to elaborate on this. How to stretch the business beyond 2040, building on what Mr. Dutto said.
Well, first of all, I think I would be happy to see. I mean, I take the point that we need to have a long-term perspective, but I mean, I think we are not there yet to have. I mean, first, I'd like to see greater projects than those that we have, and those necessarily will not always need the 20 or 25 years perspective. So let's be very clear on that. I think, and here we also have to recollect why we are doing this. And I think the point is we're doing this because we need to sort of reduce emissions across the economy in order to get to the legal obligation to have a net zero economy in Europe. And the co-legislator through the Renewable Energy Directive has been very explicit, because that is a stated legal requirement on the additionality, etc., which the Commission had to implement through these delegated acts. So I don't think the question is so much about will we have enough or not. I'm pretty sure that because we have now a stable regulatory framework, the market will follow up with a solution. The question is more, will we be able to facilitate sort of the market to come up with the interactions in time? And I think here, and that's also why the Net Zero Industry Act is so important, we need to look a little bit beyond, the discussion around what solutions do we have available and, technological maturity, etc., to take into account other things that makes sort of market action in Europe a bit complicated, and that is plethora of, different approaches at the local, regional, national, and European levels to scale up production and etc. So I think it's more on those enabling conditions to create them in a more streamlined way so that we get to bigger and better projects. Because I fully agree here with what panelists said. This is the core aim of this alliance, is to basically have a little bit of a measurement and matchmaking exercise. We need to know what we have in Europe, and not only in France or in Germany or in Denmark. And we need to get away from this. Every member state does it by its own thing. I mean, we have one sector that needs to reply at a European level. And I think in that sense, the alliance will help. And in that sense, I for me, think the question is, what kind of enabling conditions do we create? Not so much will we have enough. In the one or other way, there will be enough. But we need to create the enabling conditions for that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So thanks to our panelists for this very enriching debate. I have plenty of notes, but in my notes I have some keywords: cooperation, collaborative effort, matchmaking, and also industrial, different industrial matches and industrial activities that are gathering together and working together. So with that, I would like also to thank the Commission for that initiative, taking the lead. The Alliance has different objectives, but one of the top, I would say, is really to facilitate the market. And it is a very challenging action that requires really a very thorough collaboration of a very broad industrial sector. I would like now to invite for the very closing remark, Mr. Darko Levikar, Director Mobility Policy at Hydrogen Europe, and Hydrogen Europe is part of the Secretariat of the Alliance, for his conclusion and wrap-up remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Manuela, and thank you for your lovely moderation of this panel. It's quite a difficult panel. It's quite technical, but it's very important to know about the details of the Alliance work. And Good afternoon to everybody in the room and everybody following us online. First, let me take this opportunity to thank again the European Commission and DG Move for providing this safe environment for the discussion of different stakeholders on this very important topic, how to decarbonize these two heavy-to-abate transport sectors, maritime and aviation. Also, let me thank all the roundtable chairs and vice chairs for their contribution and the work already done, but also the work that will still be done in the future in the roundtables. Also to Safran and Fincantieri that were chairing the two chambers of the General Assembly for the first year. And then again, to also Fuels Europe and to my colleagues at Hydrogen Europe for providing all the work of the Secretariat. And also to Madam Inmaculada Gomez. I was listening closely to the Spanish presidency goals, and we are expecting highly that also one of the questions that was posed, how to include the SAF technologies in ENZIA and how to cater for the needs of these two sectors also during their presidency will be taken with care and with much, let's say, attention to details. It's almost exactly a year from today that the Renewable Low Carbon Fuels Alliance started its work. So, and today we are counting 223 members, a little less than Axel said at the beginning, but I think we will reach that number 250 in a short period of time. But what is important is what we heard today is cooperation, collaboration, working together, being a team effort, not a single run to the end. So we are working together with industry, with research, with different associations, with the also financial sector, public authorities, different public institutions, NGOs. So different stakeholders are contributing to the discussion in the round tables, and this is very important in order for us to find the pathway forward. The alliance is still open, so anybody willing to contribute to the work can still join in, and this transition to zero emission and reaching the goals set in the smart and sustainable mobility strategy for the transport sector will not be easy. Therefore, we will need a lot of smart heads, not just those that are sitting here today and being joined with us, but also others that are willing to contribute and have something to say, to come in, to join, and to give it their opinion on the work being done. This today is an important point, like 1 year from the beginning of the alliance, to take stock. We heard of what is already being done, but also look into the future. The important part of the legislative proposals of Fit for 55 was done, so we have some rough outlines of the legislation, which needs to be now taken into action. So therefore, the next step is to launch a call. The Commission will launch a call in October this year for the projects to be signed in, the projects for renewable and low carbon fuels into the pipeline. And based on that, the European Commission will have a very good platform for a discussion with member states and different stakeholders in order how to move on the topic of renewable and low carbon fuels for the two sectors that we are talking about. So, as Axel said at the beginning, the work, already a lot of work was done, but a lot of work still needs to be done. So, roundtables will keep on working. The chairs sitting here and the vice chairs being present with us will continue work with different stakeholders, and we are applying to everybody to join in, to work with us in order to have these common goals set and reached by 2030, 2035, 2040, which are now some timelines that we would also like to cross and go beyond to carbon neutrality of the continent by 2050. Thank you a lot, and I pass the floor back to you, Manuela, for the conclusions.
Thank you very much, Darko. So I have just only one conclusive word. Join me with a big applause for our panelists and for Darko for his closing remark. And thank you for your participation and active participation to our panel. Thank you.
So goodbye.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you can disconnect.